upstairs. People are not.
There you go.
But there's
And it's
already
also,
income.
there's no
Okay,
ever good
see?
time.
All right.
I'm helping you.
See, I was gonna ask
Like,
Steve
It's going on the
if
market
he knew
tomorrow.
anybody. Is it really?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to get creative. At first, I'm like, well, I don't want to give it up.
I mean, I think
It's
you'll probably.
such a great space because I know once I give it up, it's gone. But life is life, and you make decisions. And if we're not using it, we're not using it.
People are hitting pitches like
But the thought was, well, maybe
like
do you do something like, like a work share thing or something like that.
Yeah, like 4 players are going to.
It's a little overwhelming to think about that,
That's overwhelming.
right? And like managing that, and what does it look like, and how do you get the people, and how long
like
is
per
that?
diem and
like
I thought about that. Like I wanted that watch shop right next to you.
Yes.
And I was gonna buy that.
Gotcha.
And I was like, I don't know how to make it work.
Yeah.
It's good to be that good.
And that's the tough part. And I think
championship series.
I have the ability just to rent out the whole, like just to sublease the whole thing. And Kyle let me do that. He's like, I don't want you to go anywhere. You know, I want you to stay. So
Is Jonas got any more clarity of what
eventually.
He wants to work.
It's just money.
It's just money. I know. That is true. And so that's the hard part we've been like trying to process. You know, is I love to do, like an open workspace.
Yeah.
I gotta basically go through.
How do I get that going? I mean, it won't cover everything. It'll offset it. Maybe that's okay. These are all things like I'm thinking about right now. I'm not so sure how to like. I didn't know if you
You're
knew
already
about it.
thinking about a second.
I mean, we have a lot.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
You're right. Well, then I have 3 businesses. We have the other side is so a lot of what we do, not to digress too much, but I will pursue this discussion later with you. But
But he's like,
our
saving a ton of money
engineering
and
is our primary
it's like,
function.
it's probably one of
But
those things where
my father years ago always thought of, well, we'd love to do our own projects. Right? You know, and so we tried that. We did a little development. I technically have another company. If we're going to be technical,
We'll throw that in.
non-operational. And so where we were, generating our own work.
yeah, he's not
Forsky pretty much does that. There's a couple other guys. You get your own site and develop what he sells. So
but he feels
we've
like
kind
he's
of
got everything
toyed
figured
around
out
with
that's
that.
coming
We've
out.
thought
Yeah,
about that. Start small, go big eventually. It's just I've been in such like survival mode somewhat for us.
Yeah.
And I totally still am. Trying to make that work. And it's again,
Are you going to talk about that today?
no,
Okay.
You should.
not
That's
survival
what I
mode.
said to him. I said, don't.
That may come out naturally, like it just did. That may come out.
Not that piece, but like how you got to where you
Once he
are
got through
right
that,
Well, I don't know how far you
breathe,
want me to
relax.
go.
Well,
And then
as
we'll
long
talk.
as comfortable as you are, because
Oh, I'm an open book, man.
because I also view this as an encouragement to other people.
Yeah. So that last question for me, you've heard of not the I just came from a conference and
Motivated up.
well, yeah, I knew.
It's like
that.
Siren's I think it's almost Tuesday.
You've heard of Alison Levine, right? A lot of people know her. She led the first women's expedition up Everest.
Oh yes.
And like, a lot of these.
I heard her talk. I saw like 30 speakers last week, but she was one of them. And something that she said like it really stuck with me. And again, it's basic, but it's kind of going back to go.
What's your timeline?
And so we get defeated through that. I know I did,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how you actually summon Everest. I thought you start base camp, you go to camp 1, you go to camp 2, you go and you summit. She's like, why do you think it takes 2 months? You go to base camp for a week, and then you go to that for a night, and then you come back for another.
Oh really?
And then you go back to camp 1 for 3 days, and guess what? Then you come back to base camp. Then you go to second camp for 2 weeks, then to camp 1, and guess what? Then we go all the way back. It was like the perfect analogy that like we all know that somewhat, but it hit me at the right points in the right.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, so that was like my notes on like the key takeaway through the pandemic, because I'm still in that right now. I think I'm still coming probably back to base camp. I probably was up at maybe 3, but sorry, we got to come back to 1. So there was a lot. It's just a perfect analogy. We know that, but it was a good system. She had a couple of little like fun notes in here that I would pull out if asked that question. But
Hint, hint.
no, too many
We have a
notes,
lot.
You
but
gotta
HVAC
do what you
mechanical
gotta
is the
do there.
biggest one.
But
We're
it's-
a little
it's
dreading
good stuff.
But I'm not that good to
because
ask
that's just the lead time.
No,
is
it's fine.
awesome. So we're hoping.
So-
It's your job to weave it in.
Oh, here we go. What's one
But
piece of
yes, we have
advice?
one of the
Okay.
RTUs is perfectly working. It's not
Oh.
That might be it there.
so we're cool.
Huh?
We're
That might
good.
be it there where you talk about that piece.
Well, I would think,
When you're already in.
I would think,
Like all the duct work's good.
like, what coming out of the shared experience of the pandemic, what's a key takeaway you learned about yourself and your business?
In your business.
I felt like that's kind of where that would be. But I'm happy to,
Yeah, they have
I'll put
like
wherever
a
you
bulletproof teller.
Wherever
The
it
drive
makes
through
sense.
there. With
I have a feeling you're not even gonna get to me, which I'm fine
We're
with.
like, well, that's pretty cool. We just have a text go by. We drop stuff in. We're like,
We are gonna
that,
get
we
to
got.
Oh, we'll get to, oh, yeah. don't worry about
Oh,
that.
no.
But yeah, they had some pretty unique operational things that we would never use.
It is on. I hear it.
Are we on, Dan? Oh, yeah, we are on. Nice.
Testing, testing, 1, 2. So don't say anything you don't want to say.
So don't say anything you don't want heard.
What's this live? Tell us. You just gave away half your secrets on the mic. Yeah, exactly. Isn't that something?
Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2.
It starts at 11, right?
Yep.
So doors are open.
My watch died already today, so I'm like,
It's early.
time is.
1:45.
It's an early program, so people
Yeah,
don't have to call.
Oh,
Isn't he the cutest?
beautiful
He
face.
is so
The
cute. My
cheeks.
grandbaby.
Oh,
So cute.
I love it.
I can't. 50? I'm not cheating.
I love it. I love it.
He is something else, though.
Is that your only right
He's
now?
my only
Okay.
right now, yeah.
How old is he? What, 3,
He'll
4?
be 2.
2, there
He'll
we
be
go.
2, yeah.
So fun.
He is
They are
racing around.
Yeah.
Crazy child. No fear.
No fear. Yep.
No fear at all.
I have I'm on the younger side. I have a 4 and an 8.
Nice.
And the 8 is very much like me in many ways. Or he's a mix of course, but he tends to be like very strategic. He likes to prep, and then he'll execute. And we give this example of the stairs. My son did not walk up a single stair until he was ready, and then he ran up the stairs. Whereas my 4-year-old humbled for weeks
Sure.
and figured it out. Like that is the fundamental difference between the two of them. So the youngest is my brute. He just is tumbling and rolling everywhere he goes. So he's a good
Bumps and bruises.
yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, I find people at these 11 o'clock ones come at 10:57.
It's all good.
It's usually.
When we show up.
Thank you all. I appreciate this. I'm excited about this. I'm really excited about this. I had so many people say, I'm coming because so-and-so is going to be there.
Andy told me if I heckle him, he's going to heckle me back.
Let's see how that
Love
works.
it. Yeah, and this morning, so my wife, I may or may not have forgotten to tell her I was
Oh,
doing it.
see?
And so, right? So last night, so I told her like last night. She goes, what? So last night she's like, well, can I come? I'm like, hey, yeah, no, sorry.
Did you seriously?
No. Like, you can if you want, but with the kids, she's got the kids and all that. So great. I'm like, but it'll be online. You can watch
It'll be online. I can watch it later.
Right.
It's not the
My
same as
wife was
being
like, I'm not coming anyway because I got something at school for the kids.
Isn't that something? Yeah, exactly.
I said that's why I didn't ask you because I knew you were going to be at school.
See?
You knew she was
You're
gonna
being
have something
thoughtful.
going on.
My guess is Andy won't get here till 11:30.
I love it.
He was running into some snags before he
Oh.
came here, before I left, so just
Cause-
do what we gotta
There's
do.
no snags that happen when you have stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah, your business. Whew. When I looked at this one question about the
Yeah.
pandemic, I thought your business.
How you doing?
I have a short answer to that because you can. It's either I say
This
nothing
well, you can't just say that's shutting down. I'm like, you actually mean I gotta power it down? Come on.
Shipped out here. We had 3 inches.
Oh my god.
It's
So then I was like, all right.
yeah, but at the end of the day, it's all my fault.
Tap
So
house.
it's not the battery life. It's my fault. Ridiculous.
It's like most things.
Terry, how are you? Good.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Framing, different kind of tracks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, they can kind of, it'll take time. But,
Oh, for sure.
so I would definitely
Yeah. Because it sounds like they do everything from small to large and everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the same contractor.
Yeah.
Like, that would be
Recognize my house, but
I don't know if we're gonna go yet or not.
over at like Shell Road.
So,
Like Allen Barnes.
Gotcha.
Lots of dirt.
Lots of
He's
sites.
getting pushed
Yeah.
around.
I haven't touched base with Tom on anything. I could go today. That's good.
Yeah, from your guys. Through the township. Allen Barnes.
Long gap. That's where the security guards are.
twice. They look
So we're moving them in.
Nice.
another highlight.
Yep. 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 That's a big part of what they're doing.
Yeah, so I think they're gonna clean that up and blade it off.
I'm looking for a grant with Flint Company right now.
See that actually plays out.
Yeah. That is a benefit of something like that. You know. Yeah, that's a big benefit of having a bigger company.
Yeah. Well, it worked out good because I
Yeah,
lived
I'll go. Which one's far?
area,
Yeah. Let us make
I
her
went out
all
there
the fun. She wants us to make faces.
that warehouse.
Yeah, perfect.
Finish off their babies.
So I went up in February and I was able to see him
Yeah.
and then I saw him again more than
They're good people.
and then a week later.
The boys love it. I'm proud of it.
Oh, how did your Spruce Lake weekend go? Oh, right.
But yeah, it was good. It was nice to just, beautiful tree.
Yeah.
They're super fun. They love to do stuff.
So you go up on
We have their trailer in the,
I saw her in the freaking
So you hang out with Dennis Gaines and that.
Denny's our front yard neighbor.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Him and I knew each other well. I went to Spruce Lake as a kid. I was from Oil State. So I had no idea. You come up to Providence Store and catch the bus. And I had no idea. Like, I here. Yeah, and so then I ran into Dennis. Anyway, he invited us up for a weekend. It was one of those like weekend getaway things. So I threw the kids in the car and went. Oh yeah. We loved it. Then a couple months after that, I went up to my own for like a weekend. They had
Did you ever have to use it?
No, thank God, because then that's a mess. It is traumatic to have, not only is it cleanup, but you have to go back through all your inspections. You gotta go back and help the cars in, like, it's a nightmare. That answer system, you know.
Yeah.
We're gonna try everything to prove it not.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So if I don't talk to you, I hear you. So we're working on it, but, you know, I just wanted to.
Oh, really?
I appreciate it, thank you.
Is that October, September? The clay shoot, is that September? Yes. It's on the calendar, yeah. I'm gonna try it now that we're in and settled, and I've been crazy, but really trying to be a part of this, and, you know, maybe I'll be a part of the panel someday. And we're,
Good morning. It's good to see everyone here. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Steve Huntsberger. I'm the Executive Director of the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I'm happy to welcome you to our spring forum. We are calling this Stories of Startup to Success, and I'm really pleased with our group of panelists that we have here. I'm going to make introductions real quick, and then I'll do some opening comments. So we have Derek Loux. Derek is founder and current Executive Vice President of Excel Communications Worldwide and President of Integrated Security, and has a few other titles which he probably will tell us about through the morning. We have Pam Brunner. Pam is President of Franconia Cafe and Market. We have Brad Bissinger. Brad is CEO and Managing Partner, is owner of Renew Design Group. I just gave you a new title. I think you should do that. And we have Nate Clemmer. Nate's down on the end there. He's CEO and Managing Partner of Synatek Solutions. So let's welcome them this morning. I also want to say a special thanks to Derek and Excel Communications Worldwide and Integrated Securities for sponsoring this event this morning. And I will say a quick thanks to Sellersville Theater in Washington House, and Dan Fega is up in the sound booth running this today. So thanks for helping us make this possible. So these forums have quickly become member favorites. It's a great way for members to tell their stories and serve as encouragement for others. This peer-to-peer learning that you've all asked for is very important, and we keep these on recording for future generations on YouTube. So this will be available by the end of the week that you can share this. And we also have a great space here and partner in the Sellersville Theater, so we're very happy about that. So first off, let's recognize the importance of entrepreneurs, visionaries, and executors. That's who you see sitting up here. Entrepreneurs take risks, and they spend hours and hours working in and on their business. Some might even call it, can we call it a lifestyle? Is that fair? They build organizations, systems, and processes. And many, like our panelists, are responsible for the well-being of many families, including their own. And let's acknowledge how important that is to society. Our panelists are about building things, including strong community. According to the SBA, small businesses create on average 2 million jobs annually and account for 47% of the private workforce. That's an amazing statistic if you think about it. It's a crucial portion of our economy. Most of you all know about this, so this is nothing new for you, but it's important and crucial to the economic health and well-being of the local community, state, and nation. But we're here to hear from you this morning, so let's jump right in. And if we have time, at the end we'll take some questions from the audience as well. But Derek, let's start with you. So can you tell us the story of your founding, and actually tell us a little bit about your business, but tell us the story of your founding, and include people that were involved with it and why you chose the business that you did.
All right, so we're going to start off with an easy question. And what happened to the ladies before gentlemen? I was anxious to hear your story, Pam. So, story of my founding. I'm going to tell a story. So I'll never forget, it was December of 1999. I was working with a company that, I'm in an IT company, and we're at a Christmas party, and the owners are sitting there, and they're explaining how profits were through the roof, best year ever, just what an amazing year and how grateful they were. About 6 weeks later, we're having our reviews, and we're asked to take pay cuts. And to me, it was I'm like, what happened 6 weeks ago to now? So I took a negative, and I just thought about it, and I said, well, I never want to feel this way again. I talked to fellow colleagues and employees with me, and I saw how much pain and hurt they felt through this process of taking pay cuts after the best year ever. And I just started to talk to one of my partners in the business who was there, and he was second in command and a good friend of mine. And we spent about the next 8 months trying to plan of how we're going to do something different, right? And so I took a negative, made it a positive, and one of the creeds I live by in my business is never put profits in front of people, and you never forget where you came from. So to this day, I always approach my business decisions as looking through my employees' eyes, and always putting them in front of us. And so the most important people, I would say, in my business decisions were God. My faith is everything in my life. My wife, my bride. I never make big decisions without first talking to her. When I started the business, we were engaged, just about to be married. So I knew we were going to be diving into all of our savings account. And when you're starting a new marriage off, it's good to have your spouse on board with any big decisions. And then, of course, at the time, my business partner was George Nolte, good friend of mine. He was second in command. George has since retired out of the business. But I would always credit him to just being a true motivator in starting up the business. I hope I answered your question.
Pam, why don't you go next?
So many of you know me through my hat that I wear at the Franconia Cafe. I know so many faces sitting here. I think most of you have graced our doors there. But Andy and I have taken a new adventure in the last few years that I have sitting here in front of me. So today I'm taking off my cafe hat for the most part and putting on my Old Town Cracker Company hat. So we've started this new business out of a growing need to have a product that is no longer available. And so if you're native to this area, you know that OTC, in its original form, the big hard oyster crackers, were something that were very kind of indigenous to this area. And in 2018, they made a choice to go out of business. They sold the recipe to someone, and the guy tucked it in his pocket and moved away. And they have not done anything with it. Andy said, I am going to take this as a challenge, and we need to have these crackers to serve with our oyster stew, and I'm going to make them. And I was like, you are out of your mind. Because we have way better things to do than make crackers. And he's like, nope, I'm doing it. And I give all the credit to him. He spent the hours putting in and formulating and trial and error to ones that were terrible, to ones that are now great. And I do give all that credit to him for getting that started. So 2018, they closed. We started making our own. And the next thing, we had all of our customers at the cafe wanted to have some for their brother and their mother and their sister and their aunt. And the next thing, we had customers driving an hour or two to come and pick up crackers. Like, who would have ever thought? Crackers, right? And so now it's this thing. And we're like, what are we going to do with it? So I'll bring you into 2020. Of course, the pandemic happened. The restaurant was kind of in crazy land, which we'll address later. But we started making crackers because we needed more to do during that time, I guess. And then by 2020, the holidays, because of course in our area, everybody uses these to make oyster filling or scalloped oysters. They needed those crackers to make that filling. And the orders were so great that we couldn't make enough way to stop taking orders. By the holidays coming on of 2021, we were producing pretty regularly. Every week we were producing, setting them out on the counter. We could barely keep up with the demand, but we did make it through the holidays that year. And we're already in conversation with Tom Berge at Berge Creative, saying we need to do something more. And so Tom helped us develop a logo, helped us develop a website, helped us develop a little bit of marketing, and also convinced us to sell online. So March of 22, we opened up an online store, and up to date, we are in 25 retail locations. We are sold to 46 states, and just last week, we signed a lease on a building to expand our production, and we'll be moving down to Harleysville, across from Green Tweed in the industrial park there. We'll be having a manufacturing plant there. So I give lots of credit to a lot of people along the way. Andy just walked in the back door there. He is the one who brought on the development of the product, and we could not do business, I think, without each other. We've done business together since 2001. Some people, think, how can you have your spouse by your side all the time? I'm not going to tell you it's easy all the time. And we'll be the first ones to admit that. We share an office, we share a home, we share everything, right? And sometimes it's hard, but for the most part, I can't imagine doing business without him, and I'm grateful for that. So that's our nutshell of where we came from and what's driving it, and we'll talk more later.
Dare I say that they're better than the originals, Andy?
You can say that.
I can say that. And quite honestly, you can't have holiday dinner, Thanksgiving or Christmas without these. So if you're not familiar with them, you have to get yourself a bag. You have to crack them first. That's very important. It's critical. Brad, would you share with us, please?
Absolutely. Brad Bissinger. I have a small civil engineering and landscape architecture firm in Souderton. I could spend probably 10 minutes explaining what we actually do, but maybe at some point I'll get to it. But primarily we help people develop large projects, schools, universities, dorms, and we do smaller things too. That's as short as I can make it. But our company was founded out of survival, really. We all work for a large full-service engineering firm that used to be in Talmenson, used to be called Shorta Palma. If any of you have been around here for a little while, later name changed to CMX for various reasons. But my father at the time ran their Talmenson office, and specifically the land development group. So I started working there in about 2003. And for a few years, 4 years, we were doing great. The group was doing really well. But the firm at that point had tried to grow during 06 and 07. And then the recession hit in 08 and 09, and they were having trouble. So a venture capitalist firm kind of came in, bought majority, and by 2010, I believe, over 1,000-person firm was was gone. But during that time, it wasn't exactly a healthy environment, right? It was 08, 09, early 09, they started doing massive layoffs. 20 people come into the conference room, boom, 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 boom. And so our group had been able to hold it down because we were doing well relatively, but we knew it was coming for us. So there was a great group, a team that was in there that essentially went to my father at the time and said, hey, his name was Ken, hey, Ken, we're not doing good out here. Everybody's very sad, depressed. Can we have some hope here? And they said, if you go, we'll go with you. And mind you, I really had nothing to do in that conversation. I was on the other side of the building in like a cubicle on a computer. So they discussed it, and they figured out, man, how can we do this? Because in our business, we have non-competes. And that makes it very difficult just to pick up and walk away with all your clients. So they discussed it and figured out it may be a risk they'd be willing to take. So then he walks across the building and comes into my cube and says, hey, Brad. I said, yes, Dad. Although I called him Ken in the office, but sometimes I dance between the blinds. And I said, what do you need? And he said, hey, a bunch of people came to me and said they'd be willing to start a business. And he says, do you think we can do it? and I'm just in the computer. I'm moving things around. I have no idea. Nothing about operations, nothing about business. But I had I was good at the technical stuff. And he said, can we make it happen? And how would we do it? So we had a couple-minute conversation, and I said, I think we can do it. I get some servers, get some computers. I'll figure it out. I'll do the best I can do if you can do it.
And this is said as a true engineer.
Yeah, right, exactly. And generally, half the time, we don't know what we're doing. That's the key. No. So we had an idea, and we went with it. And so at that point, similar, I had just gotten married. I had just bought a house, and then very quickly, I was about to lose my job at some point. And then we were starting another business. So my wife always says I kind of had like 3 or 4 jobs for many, many months. But we did it. We were able to come together. We left. We fired up a server the way you used to do it, not the cloud, right? And away we went. And we did that for a whole first year. We all worked remotely. And the only reason we were able to do that is because we were able to bring some projects over. And there were some hardships through that. But that's the short story. If that makes sense.
Nate.
I'll try to be short as well. Are we able to bring up that one slide, potentially?
Possibly.
If not, there you go. I think you might have to click twice, potentially, Dan. There you go. So I'll go backwards a little bit to go forward. So we have a couple different companies. That one that says Synatek Reach has been in business for 20 years officially, but prior to that, for the former 30 years, total of 50 years, was a division of Moyer & Son. So Moyer & Son was a family business that I grew up in, multiple generations. I think I would have been 7th generation if I would have stuck around. One of the rules of our family business at Moyer & Son is you had to go somewhere else and do multiple years of what was called meaningful work. So I did my meaningful work and realized that, hey, this is a lot better than working in a family business. And so fast forward, my dad they had an opportunity at Moyer & Son. There was a lot of agriculture. And all the farms were leaving this community. And the Moyer & Son ag business were chasing farms to Lancaster County. They were setting up fertilizer plants in Lancaster County. They had an opportunity to sell that business. And so it made sense. They sold the ag business. My dad was running the ag business. And that was his primary responsibility for him and his 2 partners. The business was evolving to home services. It's now Moyer Indoor Outdoor. And my dad was the youngest of the partners, but he kind of felt like maybe it was time to move on. Growing up in a family business, I think he always questioned whether he could have done it on his own. So this was a chance to kind of maybe leave and move on to something else. And so he took with him this business that we now call Synatek Reach, which was sort of the non-farm agricultural part of what Moyer & Son did, because the company that bought the farm assets didn't want it. So it started with like 7 people roughly 20 years ago. At this time, I'm like pursuing, non-family business stuff, and I was working at TH Properties, and I figured I'll be there forever. My dad called before he decided to sell. He said, Nate, you think you're coming back? I'm like, nope. Sure enough, THP went bankrupt. I went with it. No plan for what's next. 2 kids, 3rd one on the way, bigger mortgage than I could afford. And basically my dad said, hey, I could use someone who can do accounting, because believe it or not, I have an accounting degree. And my title used to be controller. Internally, I was always known as the out-of-controller. But my dad said, hey, I need someone to help with accounting at this little Synatek business. And so I started doing that part-time, like 5 hours a week kind of thing. And then that just sort of grew. My hours grew, and then the business grew. And my dad just felt like it was a good time for him to be done. So about 7 years ago, I bought the business from him. And then he had 2 partners who are still small minority partners with me. So that's Synatek Reach. But I live my life distracted. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, these other 3 businesses to the right have been started in the last couple years. And I'll talk mostly about the Branch Creek business in terms of why we founded it, and some of these other questions will be specifically related to Branch Creek. But we started that business because a lot of the other things that we do are things like Roundup. We make chemical fertilizers, and I just felt like there was a better way to do all of that, alternatives to Roundup, alternatives to chemical fertilizers. And my wife and I built a house on this Branch Creek. We all know that around here. And that was sort of like the backdrop for which this whole, I'll call it, thought process for Branch Creek started. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's the backstory.
So one thing that I noticed as everybody has been speaking, you probably caught this. You all started your businesses out of necessity because something stopped being produced, or you needed to go another direction. So you would not have necessarily gone down this path, my guess is, if a roadblock hadn't been thrown up in front of you. Just want to throw that out there. So Pam, let's start with you next. So Derek, we'll let ladies go first. And then we'll just kind of go down the row and then come back around here. So what is the biggest surprise that you encountered? So this is either your new cracker company or whatever it happens to be. What's the biggest surprise that you encountered as you started your new business?
Well, I already told you that it wasn't my idea to start this, and so that was a surprise that it grew and became this thing that we couldn't imagine. But I think the thing that cracks me up more than anything and has surprised me is that people are so passionate about crackers. And I know that sounds really wild, but as we've been developing the company, customers are writing to us about how we saved Thanksgiving. And I'm like, what? I mean, how does that happen? And other things that they said are, we've brought back a memory of a loved one that we used to share these with. And then also, they've also been able now to make the recipe that their mother or their mother's mother, grandmother, whatever, made. And so it's a memory. And Andy and I have learned, if we've learned nothing else through the last 22 years, that food is a memory. It takes you to a place and a time immediately. If you put something in your mouth and close your eyes, you are immediately transported somewhere. And these crackers do that. So the next goal, with knowing that, is how do we create the next generation of people who need these crackers to make another memory. And so, yeah, that's our big challenge, but it's also been maybe the surprise of how incredibly passionate people are about crackers.
This is the biggest surprise, huh? Well, like I said, when we had started in 2009, we had 6 people. We started with 6 people right out of the gate, and we started with 3 projects. So I say, kind of to be frank, right out of the gate, it kind of was easy. We fired up the systems, and we rolled right over in producing. It was the same team, same templates, same work. So that side of it was pretty fluid, and we kind of rolled right into it. The only thing that we had to look out for on our side, specifically, again, was these non-competes. We did receive several letters from attorneys. We did figure out how to handle those. Essentially, we bided time. And eventually the company closed for us. And so that is what helped us kind of push through that. That could have been a serious problem. We were aware of it, but we had to take the risk anyway. And in our business, so many businesses are relational, and I have things on that a little later, but if they don't want to work with you anymore, they're leaving. I can't really keep you there, so it gets a little complicated. But that was one of the biggest surprises in that sense, was that we weren't pursued kind of more about that. But because we had a good team and we were already built to do it, we pretty much just were able to turn a light switch on and roll right over. Now, there were a lot of things we did not have figured out that took us several years to figure out. But the functions were pretty straightforward for us.
So it was an easy transition for you.
In our case, yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Nate.
So I think maybe can we bring that slide up again that had the different entities? So like we talk about like starting different businesses. I think of it more as it starts with ideas. We kind of say like, what's the problem we're solving that no one else is pursuing? And then we go to work to solve that problem. And then we come up with something. So like we've got an ice melt product that is as clear as water. It doesn't contain any salts. It's the only ice melt product in the world that's Green Seal certified. It's considered to be the safest environmental product for de-icing. But it fits under our Branch Creek brand, better for the planet, that kind of thing. We have issues with, across the United States, we have issues with water quantity out west. And so you have places like golf courses and farm fields. And it's like, what would it look like to develop a technology that will allow farmers and golf courses to be able to put amendments with their water to essentially get more out of it? And it was like, that's an idea worth pursuing. That fits under our Ecotronics brand. And so I can't say that, when the question is what surprises you about starting a business, I would probably change it and say, what have surprised me is launching a product. And I would say the adoption curve is far longer than you'll ever expect it to be. So like, it's that curve that starts thin and it's got this big belly to it, and it's like innovators, early adopters, and it's like first majority, late majority, maybe seen the curve. That beginning is painful and really painful, and it's way longer than you'd ever think. And you'll talk to friends and family that'll give you all the praise in the world, so you get this false sense of security. And so like, you just think it's all gonna work, it's gonna be so quick, and then you get into the curve and you're like, this is terrible. So I think that's been a surprise, is just how hard it is to change behavior. Has been the biggest surprise for me.
Never even thought about that. Thank you. Derek.
Wow, biggest surprise. So I guess it would be in August of 2001 is when I officially gave my notice and was moving on from my last job. And October 13th, I actually got married. So what happened between August and October in 01? 9/11. So that was surprise one. Best business plan ever, right? Could you ever envision seeing that in your business plan? So we had given our notice, moved on. We bought a van, bought testing equipment. 9/11 happens, and we had no idea what we were going to do. Everything shut down. So we chased projects. One of the biggest surprises I'll say is I didn't realize how loud my business partner snored. Our first job was in North Carolina. We drove down to North Carolina. We slept in the van together because we had no money. And I could not believe. I wanted to sleep outside in the pasture because he snored so loud. So we joked about that, and we grew from that. So since then, we had 9/11, we had the 08 recession, and we had the pandemic. So I'm not going to say there's much that surprises me anymore, but I would kind of agree with what Nate said. I'd say people are changing, and hard work ethics are changing, and labor force is changing. So the biggest surprise for me is watching how that labor force has changed in about our 23rd year of business.
So we often use the term passion, particularly when we talk about founding a business. So Brad, let's start with you. So what is your passion, and how does that or did that connect with your business?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one for us. So one of the caveats about our business is my father and I and 4 people started it, and then in 2018 he unexpectedly passed away. So I was technician, operations. He was everything else, business, relationships, BD, and then one day he wasn't there anymore. So I was, in many ways, clearly not prepared. The company wasn't prepared for that. He always thinks he had 10 more years. And so this one was really hard for us because I came in the next day and said a very enlightening thing. I said, well, here we are. And, I tried. I didn't know. And everybody, of course, was there, and they understood. And I said, we're going to do whatever we can do to keep this thing going. So they hung in there. They all hung in there with me. They helped me. But a part of that, something very interesting, is that my father worked for several engineering firms in the area. And a lot of his business was doing business development. And a part of that was figuring out who are we, what are we, how do we do it, how can I sell? I've got to know what we're doing. I can't sell, right? And he was amazing at that. I found old articles in his file cabinet of just articles out, and he would make notes. This is what we need to do for 20 years ago. But the saying is, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. He never did that for us. So in a moment's notice, we had to sit down and say, well, what do? Well, we know what we build. We help build schools. We help architects. We help contractors. We help get land development approval. But why are we here? What are we doing? As if I needed more, as I tried to dig in to take over the company, financials obviously are important, but why are we even here? So that was something that took us a multi-year venture that I would say probably only last year did I actually figure out. But it was mainly due to marketing. We had to sit back and figure out, all right, well, who do you want to market to? Well, I think here. Well, why? And who? And for what? And so one of the things that we have is, the business has a bigger purpose. What we do is that venue to communicate with people and to connect. But our mission statement is to honor God through the level of care of our clients, generosity where we find ourselves, and thorough designs to create a positive impact. And so it's much bigger than what we do. We're really trying to help our clients create a big space. And an example of that is schools. A lot of people and a lot of diversity, even in Souderton, attend those schools. Those places are more than just a place that they go to learn, right? They go to get fed. They go to play. They get energy from that. So we know that. So we use that to kind of make sure that we create those environments that have that impact on kids and in the community. All sorts of projects. It's amazing how you can find ways to do that through those pieces. So we didn't have passion. I don't think we had passion for what we were doing, but we didn't really know kind of our why. So over the years, I've been able to work through that, and it can be painful.
So it took a little while, but our tagline is people-powered, solutions-driven, and those are really my passions. So the people piece of it is, I really love working with people. I love the team of folks that I get to spend with every day. But along with that comes sort of a responsibility to be innovative and to grow the business. We have a very low turnover rate, and some of that is because we keep generating new opportunities, so talented people don't have to go elsewhere. I'm a big believer in first who, then what. I'll take the wrong person I'll take the wrong person. I'll take a bad idea with the right person than the opposite. And so the people piece of it's always been a passion of mine. And unfortunately, it does force growth because if you're going to keep people around, you got to keep finding new opportunities, and so you got to keep being innovative. So one of my passions is the people side of it. The other is just solving problems. I mentioned earlier I live my life distracted. I'm just always on a swivel looking for a problem that needs to be solved. I love helping other people with their businesses. I'd far rather help you guys solve the problems of your business than my own. It's just something I do. So I can't stop that part of me. Drives my wife crazy. But it's just I'm constantly scanning the horizon, looking for problems that need to be solved. And so those are passions for me. They're kind of like my hobbies in a weird way. But yeah, they kind of manifest in the business, I guess.
What was the question? I'm kidding. Yeah, so I love people as well. So I love learning people's stories. So I have a passion for relationships and people. And I think when it's the best investment you'll ever make is in people. I don't know what else to say besides that because our employees are tremendous employees. They work hard. Very similar to Nate's. My goal is to keep you with us forever, right? If I invest in you and train you up, I want you to stay with us, okay? Because you have to grow within our organization, and I often tell my people, I need to grow out. And part of me growing out is building you up and investing in you so you can take the next step in the corporate ladder if that's what you choose. So never putting profits in front of people is our tagline and one of our business development taglines. And we'll always be investing. My team will always be investing in that next generation. There are a lot of hardworking younger kids out there that wanna grow, and we're trying to find them. And I would say it's a tough market in the labor world, but the reality is when you find them, you hold on to them, and you give them a reason to never leave.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Listening to these guys, I think they've said pretty much what I would agree with, in that people is our passion. Through restaurant world or now through cracker world, neither one of them would be successful without the people. And that goes for employees, for our families who have supported us along the way, who we could not forget, and then also through our customers. And constantly be listening to the customers. Sometimes Andy says I listen too much. I tell him he doesn't listen enough, and that's what makes us work. In the point of we are able to bounce those ideas off one another and then come back to the table and say what is it that we need to do. But it is constantly listening to the people around us, and absorbing that and then taking it to the next level. And we want to be passionate about growth. Not only to better ourselves, but to make better jobs available in our community for the families that need those jobs. Also making sure that we're putting back into the community. And that's a passion of ours, because we couldn't do it without this community. And this community, I think I've heard Steve say 1,000,000 times, is so unique. You go outside of this community and it's so very different. It's so very turned on oneself versus the community pouring into you. And we see that on a daily basis, where people are pouring into us at the cafe. They're coming there for meetings, they're coming there for whatever, and that has just driven us to keep offering more. And that's our passion.
So you all passed. That was excellent. It's interesting. I will just editorialize here real quickly. When I hear high-performing business people talk about what their passion is and what they're in the business of, whether it's the equipment company, Barry Waymiller, they talk about they're not. It's not about equipment. They're in the people business. You heard that from every single person up here. A lot of our other forums also big with the big businesses. They've said the same thing. So good job. But it's true. We're here to build each other up, and that's part of this. So Nate, let's go with you next. An idea that we often hear about a lot these days is scaling. So can you tell us a little bit about how you have positioned your business to grow, and maybe takeaways from how you've implemented that?
Yeah, so scaling, we talk about the people side of it. It's very difficult to scale a business if we don't have the right human talent. So that's a huge part of it. Infrastructure is another big part of it, particularly for this area. For the type of business that I'm in, we need a lot of warehousing, trucking, that kind of thing. And I'm really committed to being in, call it the Franconia Satterton area, because I live in that area, we go to church in that area. I like the idea of being able to be to my kids' school, to home, to work in less than 10 minutes. And so there's only so much land that's zoned for the type of work that we do, and it's become hard to find as the Amazons and the big boxes are being built along major routes like the Turnpike. So we recognized this a couple years ago. Unfortunately, we're able to buy some buildings and purchase some land that'll kind of give us the ability to have all the space that we need for the next 10 years, not unfortunately under one roof, but at least in 1 or 2 zip codes that are all in the Satterton School District. So not perfect, but I'm glad at least we saw that. But we're not trying to grow right now. The last 2 years during the pandemic, a lot of our business was supply constrained, so we were only going to get so much of whatever. So we just kind of got as much money as we could for it. We talked about innovation. It's very hard to innovate when the only thing people are thinking about are masks and vaccines. Doesn't matter what idea you have, it's really hard to get people off that. So we kind of turned off the innovation button and just said, you know what, now's not the time. We're kind of getting back to a time where like you actually have to grow your business the old-fashioned way, which unfortunately means take it from somebody else. And so I think we're going to see growth in our companies, but the last couple of years, we've pretty much stayed at about the same revenue number for the last, will be 3 years.
Thank you. Derek.
I guess I should just hold this thing. So I'm going to say scaling. We've strived to plug into our clients and let our clients help to grow our business. When you develop strong, deep relationships with your clients, all you have to do is listen. What are your pains? What are you missing? What are you not getting serviced with? So we've tasked our whole business development and sales teams to kind of cross-sell. So we started out in the IT technology world. We've added an audiovisual world, security, automatic doors. So we've actually listened through these relationships, the strong relationships that we've developed over the 22 years, and listened to the pain of our clients and actually built a business plan around their pain and a way to service them. And since we've been entrusted with so much, when you're talking about people's IT network, there's a trust. When you're talking about security in organizations, there's a trust that you have. So when you have a trusted relationship, you just need to listen. And when you're listening, you've already broken down those walls of, credibility. And does this company have integrity? Do they have character? You've already had that. So bolting on another division of sales is an easy thing to do because you've already built the trust with your client. So from a scaling perspective, I would say is we just kind of listen to the pains of our clients and actually bolt on ways to service them, and that helps to scale our business. We're now just surpassed over 100 employees in 22 years, and we've had repetitive growth of 10 to 15, sometimes 20% every year. So it's worked. I'm not saying it's perfect. You can't go through 9/11, 08, and the pandemic and think it's been a perfect business plan. But the reality is it is. We chase people, not projects. And in our world, in that IT and security world and network world, it is a small network of people. And someone who might be with a healthcare is now with a pharma. So when you develop deep relationships and trust a relationship with these people, wherever they go, they tend to bring you with. It's kind of what we do.
So when we started rolling cracker balls, we had nowhere to go but up. We were literally after hours at the restaurant, pulled out a couple tables in the middle of our kitchen, sat with my mom, my father-in-law, my daughter, our daughter, Andy and I, and maybe a friend or two that thought it might be fun, which they found out really quick it was not. And they would only come one time. And really there was either you stop or you move forward. And it was really interesting to me how people in our area who are successful people came to us and said, we think this is going to be something. And we were like, it's crackers. and we laughed. And the reality is, as time went on, that's what happened. And those, I'll point out one in particular, Floyd Kratz from Gotchall Meats was one of those that came up to us and said, hey, I think this is going to be something someday. And I want to talk to you about that because that's how they grew their product from nothing. And he sat down with us, and way before we were confident that this was going somewhere, his best advice was not to grow too fast. We took that advice to heart. We slowed way down, just slow and steady. We transformed our kitchen after hours to make a product, and we outgrew that space. In 2022, we made a new space at the cafe. We squished everything into the dining room, made a new space, and we outgrew that space. And now here in 23, we're moving into a new space. So I don't know that was the projected scaling that we thought it was going to be, but we're excited about where it's going. And Andy is my visionary who keeps pushing. He already says, I have dreams of automation and all of these great things, and it scares me half to death. I mean, just to be truly honest with you. But it's the reality that we're hoping will come to reality.
Yeah, like what Derek said, chasing people, not products, is exactly what our business is, right? The problem is that it's hard to chase people sometimes, and it's hard to get in the door, and people have their people, and we're comfortable, and it's usually not until somebody has a problem that then you get an opportunity. And so that makes it a little hard for us in some capacity to, what I would say, scale organically, right, where we just let it come in, we get more projects, we go and we grow. Definitely safer for us, and that's kind of how we've been doing it for now. Just as projects grow, we grow. And then the other side is you invest in that, right? Because on the other side, you still have your operations. I'm very operationally driven. I like data. And so, so you still have to make everything work, right? We can scale and we can grow into that, but you still have to make your bottom line positive, or at least zero. So you know, those all come into play, I think, when you really look at how do we want to scale, where do we want to scale, how are we going to do it? You have all these things, and I think it then comes back to, because it's fresh on my mind, okay, again, what are we doing here? What is our ideal service? And then you go into what's your ideal client? What do they do? What do they need? How do we get in? And it really all comes back to kind of what do you want your marketing plan to be over the next couple of years, per se, like your BD people and salespeople. This is where we're going. I want you to attack all 5 of those people, because this is how we're going to get this, this, and this. So that's been a big part of our strategy right now, is more on the organic side. But as I've rerun numbers and we look ahead and you set your goals and growth and all that, there comes a point where you may need to invest, right? Where you need to say, well, if I bring this person, I can increase this and I can get that, and let's go for it. And so there's, I think, a mix. I think both happens at some point. That's where we are right now personally. We're kind of in a mix. We have a little growth, but I want to get to the next level, and that takes an investment. But that's us staying within kind of our current vertical, our clients that we serve, which are architects, contractors, and construction managers and developers. But there are other services that a lot of other engineers do, surveying, for example, or environmental. You know, I could just go hire a surveyor, bring him in, and I just added an arm and away we go, but that's an investment. So we've tried to stay away from going too wide, because there is a lot of opportunity out there for really good new clients in exactly our wheelhouse. So that's how we kind of have focused on that.
Would you share that analogy of climbing Mount Everest?
Oh, you're cheating. Okay.
Oh, are you not ready for that yet?
Well, I wasn't ready for it yet, but that was going to be a takeaway.
Okay, well,
I'll hit it now. I'll do whatever you want. All right. I shouldn't have told him some stuff.
It's so good, though. So, Derek, let's come back to you. So we're coming out of a shared experience of the pandemic, and I'm tired of talking about the pandemic. I'm tired of talking about the new normal, but I think it's still in our psyche that we need to continue to use this as a place of a touchstone. So what takeaways have you learned about yourself and your business as we have come through this last painful 3 years?
Wow. So bottom line for me is I'm gonna go back to my employees. We were deemed essential week 2. So we had a very large, very fortunate, very blessed project that we were handed right before the pandemic happened. So I'll never forget, all of my employees were nervous, as we all were week 1. So we paid them all. We just said, go home, relax. We will figure this out. Week 2, we got the nod from the hospital we were doing this large project for. And they said, hey, you guys are essential. We need to get this project moving and going. So it's one of the hardest things I think I've done over 21 years is send employees into an environment that nobody really knew what was going on. And I had to listen to my employees stating such things as, hey, I'm wearing not even an N95 mask, and there's a doctor in full garb, like completely isolated in an oxygen, working on a patient. What do I have to worry about? We were talking to CMIUs and stuff at that time, but the reality was it was a tough place to put your employees, and you had to constantly reassure them everything's okay. So a key takeaway from that whole event, I'll say, is I've never been so impressed with the driven nature of my employees and the dedication they have. They stepped up beyond belief. So with that being said, I'd give all the glory to those employees and how they actually inspired me when I saw them working and believing and trusting. And it just models what you want out of your employees. And so I'd say the biggest takeaway is I have an amazing team behind me. I feel good that I can eventually secession myself out of this organization. One of the big scaling events that we've done is we've converted our one arm of our company to a WBE, which is a Women Business Enterprise. And I saw that I could hand the torch off to somebody and not worry about it. And the team below that team was incredible. So a key takeaway for me is feeling the comfort of being able to exit, knowing that all my employees and their families are going to be taken care of because we have such great employees and great team members in key leadership positions.
Awesome, thank you. Pam.
Well, I told Steve when he put this question out here, I'm either going to talk for 1 minute or I'm going to take over the whole rest of the meeting to talk about the pandemic. But I won't do that. Restaurants and pandemic don't really go hand in hand. It was not a fun time for us, and that's no joke. The week of the pandemic, we sent all 65 employees home except one. We kept one because she had some Social Security issues and she would not be able to collect unemployment in the time. And everyone knows that the government just didn't show up to their offices for weeks and weeks on end, and we knew she would not be able to get paid. And so we kept her on along with Andy and I, our daughter, and our son. And we opened up the convenience store because that was deemed essential, and we could keep that running. So thank goodness for that, at least I think. So, and it took everything we knew from the 2001 till 2020, pretty much threw it out the door. I mean, we all know 6 weeks we were completely shut down, and 10% we were allowed to have. Out of 250 seats, that's 25 seats. Yeah, what are you going to do with that? That's one party, right? Sometimes. And it was really hard to bounce back from that. But I will tell you where our inspiration came from was from the community. They were incredibly faithful. Coming in when they did not need to go out for dinner, but they came in to get soup. They came in to get whatever they needed to feed their family, and took it home because they knew we were not making it. And that was incredibly inspiring. Our landlord, the Marchos, where we are, they decided to help us do Operation 52, which we took a lot of credit for, and we had nothing to do with it. It was all them. But it brought people to our door, not only exposing that the convenience store was open, but also helping those who could not make it during that time, who couldn't afford to put food on their table. For RNs, a lot of RNs showing up because they didn't have time to make dinner, and we were able to make a hot meal for them. It also gave us an opportunity during the PPP time when our employees were sitting at home going, we're dying, we need something to do. It gave them an opportunity to come in and serve the community the way they could during that time. And so we were blessed through that. And that was a lot of bring back from the community. Community leaving tips for my staff that it was incredible when we first opened up a little bit. And then, of course, we went outside and people just ran to that. And we were so grateful. So I would say the community was our inspiration to make it through that. But I can truly tell you that we never, ever want to go through it again. I will be in the grave if I have to do it again, because it was incredibly difficult. Every day I sit, there's a bag under my desk. It's a whole grocery bag, and it is filled to the brim with all the paperwork for 2 PPPs and the Montco grant program that went out. And I have to hold on to that bag, and it's a good reminder of the time that we went through, but I truly don't want to go through it again.
Yeah, several things. Well, I have to come back real quick to when Derek was talking about how you and your wife, are kind of one in your ventures and you bounce things off each other. My wife will probably be watching this stream, and she's probably throwing something at the screen right now, because when I said back on the biggest surprise, starting the business out, it really wasn't that bad. She's probably like ripping her hair out, like, what are you, nuts? So one of the things that it does tie into the key takeaway for me is a lot of this is perspective, right? It's taking a step back and looking at the big picture, and again, at your bigger purpose, why you're doing it, and really leaning on that to keep pushing forward. Because there are several times that I've wanted to give up, and where there's been more and more risk that I couldn't take. And the funny thing about my wife and myself is that we're never on the same page. So when there's times that I've wanted to say, I think we're done, she says, no way, you've worked 24 hours a day for 2 years, like, no way. Then there's days that, we're gonna keep going, and she's like, shut it down. But I think that's a part of that, is having somebody that you can work with, you can bounce, and then also keep you focused on what your purpose is. So I had to come back to that. Hopefully she'll be happy with that. But the other thing is, I was at a conference last week, and several of you maybe have heard of Allison Levine. She's kind of on the speaking circuit these days. She led the first women's team up Everest, and that was in 2010. And one of the things I didn't know is she had a graphic up there that showed what that journey looks like. You've got your base camp, and then you've got Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3. Maybe there's 4, I think. I'm not sure. But it gets the point across that I thought you just go 1, 1, 1, 1, and you go up Everest. That's not at all what happens. You stay at base camp for a week, and then you go to Camp 1 for maybe a day, and then you come back. And then you go to Camp 1 for a week, and then you come back. And then you go to Camp 1 for a week and Camp 2 for a day, and then you go all the way back. So that's why it takes 2 months on average to get up Everest, because you have to acclimate. And a part of acclimating is coming back, breathing, gathering, and then you're ready for the next step. So that was exactly us, and frankly, still is a little bit. Through COVID, we had a lot of issues. We had people, we had projects. A lot of them were schools at the time. They literally turned the lights out. So there was a lot of stuff we had to negotiate through that and navigate. That taught us to go into some other groups and get some new clients, which we were faithfully given. But that was a big part of it. So kind of her big shtick was, backing up is not the same as backing down, right? That's a big piece. And I really needed to hear that, frankly, because you doubt sometimes. You get in there, you go, then you have to come back. Oh man, I just got there. I just did it. I just set this up. And now it's time to come back a little and regroup and assess. So that's something that COVID really, really taught me.
So prior to COVID, like the business segments that we typically work within, they're not growing markets. Like they're seasonal businesses. You get certain amounts of snow in a year, but the market themselves don't grow. And so I mentioned before that we're kind of getting back to where it was before COVID, where to grow our business, we actually have to take the business from somebody else. And so that's how it was before COVID. And it was actually kind of worse because in mature industries, you have people doing it way longer than we have. And if they were playing checkers, they would never move their back row. So it's like, how do you win in a market against competition that never moves their back row? And so that was always very frustrating. And I would say to our team, I like our chances when everything changes. It was good bulletin board material, and then COVID came, and everything changed. So it was like, all right, big shot, now let's see how we do here. And if you think of the COVID, we think of like the pandemic part and masks and like the craziness, but it was almost like within COVID, like the business gods have blown the whistle like 3 times. They're like, okay, masks are over. Now I got a new problem for you. It's called supply chain. Go figure it out. And then it's like, okay, supply chain's fixed. I got a new problem for you. It's called inflation. Go figure it out. And I feel like the new ones got a new problem for you. It's called lack of credit. Go figure it out. And so within this like COVID umbrella, there's all these like mini movements. And I can say with humility, because it's really about the team that we've been blessed to employ, is we've had our best years in company history. And I know for a fact the same can't be said against our competition. So I guess, like, the takeaway here for me is that, I do like our chances when everything changes. And in some ways, I kind of like things to keep changing all the time. So, selfishly.
My guess is, if I asked for a show of hands, many people in this room would also say the last 3 years were some of their best years ever. So I don't know what that means, but I think thanks for calling that out. So we're coming to our end of our time here, but I have one more question, which I think is important. So what is one, and Derek, let's just start with you and we'll go down the line. So what is one, and this is no pressure, what is one piece of advice that you would have for any person starting out? I have written here starting out in business, but I would say starting a business. So we're talking about entrepreneurs, founders here. What is that one piece of advice for people starting a business?
I'll say find a mentor or somebody who's in business to coach you along the way. You've heard stories of all of us working through the 9/11, the 08 recession, the pandemic, and that's stuff you can't plan for. But when you have a good team or a mentor or someone who's already walked through that, it's helpful. It's helpful, and it helps to make sense out of stuff for you when you can't even fathom that we've all walked through this, and you guys have all walked through this as well. Whether you're parenting or whatever, we've had difficult times with our kids. So I think finding mentors and accountability people in your life to help you through the venture is crucial. And I would say older ones as well, because they are usually the wiser ones. They've walked through a lot more than I have, and that's important when you can say I know.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I think to anyone who's thinking about venturing down the business road is certainly put on your hip boots and get ready to go in the mud, because it's probably going to happen. Get ready to go in the water. It'll probably be deeper than you think. But when you put good people around you, and that was exactly what I was going to say, is someone told us long time ago, you can never surround yourself with too many good people. And I can't tell you how many times that line runs through my head. And don't be afraid to pay for it. Sometimes you don't really have the dollars, but sometimes you have to put the dollars out to get good people around you, and to give you their advice and to help you get through the muck. And that would definitely be my super good advice, is to don't be afraid to surround yourself with too many good people, because you're going to need every single one of them.
Kind of parlaying on what Nate had said earlier, complacency is the biggest piece, and you kind of talked about that a little bit. I think you're going to get tired, you're going to get exhausted, and you're going to be sad sometimes, but you're going to be happy sometimes. And so through that, you just have to know, you've got to come back to, like, why are you doing this? Why am I here? And then your responsibility to your staff, to your people, to your clients. And you have to use that. You got to come back to that every day, right? Everybody makes a joke. We're kind of the chief reminding officers, right? You hear that everywhere, where we have just got to repeat and repeat and rinse and repeat and repeat. But we sometimes forget to do that to ourselves. So as the owner, you have to just, every day, whatever it is, say what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's okay to take a break once in a while. You need that. You need to give yourself space to build that into, it's like an artist, give you room to clarify and recenter things, but definitely don't be complacent. Always being driving. When you have that great month, what can we do better? Is there an expense we can cut on the practical side, right? Is there something operational we can make more efficient? But also just keep going and invest in yourself. Like we said, learn, find your people. But there are so many good online resources out there, frankly, with basic operations things that a lot of people don't track in their first year, and they could have done way better if they spent a day researching basic budgeting, certain things like that.
So a lot of good things already said. I would say you're going to make it's going to take way more money than you ever expected, and you're going to make way less than you ever expected. I mean, I ran businesses before I owned one, but it was other people's money. And once it's your own money, it's like I got to pay 45% in taxes, and then what's left, I need to take another 45% and invest in the future. And I'm glad my wife's a school teacher because I don't think we could have done it otherwise. So it's going to, yeah, like I said, take way more money. You're going to make way less than you thought. I would say be careful what you get good at. I see a lot of people that have businesses that may be successful, but they're slaves to them. So be thinking ahead that way. Derek said it earlier, people, it's not, profits are never over people. I always say pay yourself last, plan on that if you want the best people. In addition to all those taxes and investing for the future, you get to get paid last. I mean, that's unfortunately the reality of it. And I would say, if you're a person of faith, make sure God's a part of the decision making. At the end of the day, it's going to be his money anyway. So from my perspective, that's always been a big part of it. So I would encourage that for anyone who's thinking down that path as well.
Thank you. We would have a few minutes for any questions from the audience, and probably rather than, I would just, if anybody has any questions, you can say them and I'll just repeat them for the video feed. Does anyone have any questions for this group? Yes, Rick.
So, just very quickly, in terms of what are the panel members seeing by way of opportunities with the labor market being the way it is tight, and also with artificial intelligence?
So the question was, what are the panelists seeing in regards to the labor market, and then also as artificial intelligence comes into play? Any of you? That's way above my pay grade.
I've seen nothing in terms of artificial intelligence.
That's an easy one for you.
Yeah. Labor market, I would say, when you cultivate a culture where people don't leave, the nice other byproduct of it is people do come as well. Like, they work in tandem. So when people say they can't hire people, I don't say this out loud. I say it in my brain. I'm usually like, you're probably allowed to have a lot of high turnover. There's probably some things just internally at your core you need to be looking at a little differently. So we haven't struggled to hire people, but we're also intentionally try to employ as few people as possible, just as a business design. We never have to hire more than 1 or 2 people at a time, so that helps a lot too. We're not running a meat processing facility.
That's a good example. So on the labor market for us, it's really hard because my firm is small, and so it's a weird size, and so it's hard to compete with much larger firms. So we've had to change our strategy a little bit on who we even kind of pre-interview, because for a while I was interviewing people that were coming from large firms, and I had expectations of their salary, which I thought was very generous, but apparently I was wrong. And I struggle with this culture thing. We have a great culture, we really do, but there is a limit that people are willing to sacrifice for that culture, at least in our experience. And so culture is great. There's also out there, hire the people, right, and then you can bring them into the job. I do believe in our case there is also a balance for that too, right? You need to find that right person, and then they also do need to have somewhat of a skill set to get that job done. We've gone one way before and trained, and it didn't work great. So again, right, life in moderation, right, trying to find the middle ground. But it's been hard for us. We've been looking for some kind of entry level, and expectations are very, very high because they're getting gobbled up by people that have way more cash than I do, and that makes it difficult for our size in particular. AI stuff is interesting. So we do a lot of technical work. We've got tons of screens and apps open, and we do everything we do is on the computer. And they have come out with new programs that help automate some of those processes, but it's not there yet. And so we actually, in some cases, have used some of those to get us, say, started on a design. A 30-acre site, we need to grade in a, 10,000 square foot warehouse or something, and stormwater management. You can throw in a box and it'll do it, but when you take a step back, it's not quite there. And in some cases, it's harder than if we would have just started on our own in the first place. So it's definitely getting there on certain things, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's affecting that market per se. But what it has changed in the engineering industry is separating designers and project managers, that is starting to kind of come into one, because now they're doing it live in the program in the moment. So that's been something interesting.
Cameron, Derek, any comments?
In the restaurant world, AI is something that you're starting to see in the food world, but I'm not going to address it. We haven't really even touched base with it, because for us, it's all about customer service, and AI does not provide customer service in hand. But the eye contact, the conversation that happens, that's huge. Workforce-wise, I will tell you, train up your children and your grandchildren. And no joke, the way of mom and pop world, what we work in every day, is, I think, going to come to an end, because we are not training, even in our community that is a good workforce, we are not training up our children and our grandchildren to work and be rewarded by whatever that is that they're given, whether it's verbal or whether it's monetary. And that's where our workforce starts at 14, 15 years old. And when they're not taught at home to make their beds and clean up the dishes and whatever the tasks are at your home, if they're not expected to do those things, I mean, I have kids who come in and I say, clear the table from someone's dirty dishes, and they go, well, I'm not touching that. And no joke, but that's what has to happen, right? I mean, someone's got to do it. So anyway, that's our experience.
So from a labor perspective, we changed our approach in trying to go out and, there's always people applying at your organization, but when they're coming in with 20 years of experience or 15, they're bringing their own ideas. And sometimes that works, and a lot of times it doesn't. But for us, we've aligned ourselves with VOTEC schools, community colleges. We have a lot of partnerships that we've been talking with where we're actually taking interns in and bringing them into our business before they even graduate high school. So we had 2 from Souderton High School that were interned with us, and we got to look at them for 6 months. And 1 kid went out to college, which is great. We're happy that he's off. 1 kid enjoyed us, and he actually stayed with us, and he's still with us to this day. So I'd say our model for hiring is changing. We're investing more earlier. We're in a technology sector and a security sector, as I stated. So we still have that physical work side of our business. And when you have that, AI and robots aren't there yet. They still, there are robots that are working in healthcare, and they're helping in assisted living and CCRC environments, but they're still not there yet. So I'm not saying it's not coming. We're seeing a lot of robots, drones. We're seeing drone surveillance that are replacing, guard services. It's pretty awesome, pretty cool technology, but the reality is you're now laying somebody off, right? So there's that side of it as well, which when you're relational, you struggle with, right? So I'd say we'll be changing our approach to hiring for the next forever. And I think you need to get on board with that in order to be successful and to backfill your team members. And investing early, like Pam said, is critical.
So that complacency is gone. Did you have something to add?
If I could rebut to talking about tech schools, I would highly recommend, we've had a little bit of experience in bringing in a couple students from the tech schools, and some have been great, some not so great. But at the same time, when we get down there to see the program that they're doing at Montco Tech, wow, it's impressive. Get down there and see what they're doing, because they're hitting fields that you're involved in, that we're involved in, and they have students who want to go this direction. And we have one of the best facilities out there. I think they're they're in the top 10 in the country for the program that they're running. And I think that's a real tribute to Montco. I think they're doing an excellent job.
Yeah. So if anybody is interested in connections with Montco, the Chamber has a very close relationship with the tech school, so you can see me about that. I think I'm not going to take any more questions because I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but let's give this group a hand here. Thank you so much. I continue to be impressed with the quality and caliber of people and business owners and businesses in this community, and you saw that here today. And it's but a sample. right? It's because you all, this is your story also. But I also hope that this serves as an inspiration for you. Building a business, whether you're the owner or an employee, is difficult work. The rewards are satisfaction of a job well done, and sometimes it's financial gain, but it's always that idea of moving on. Brad, you said this. It's always the idea of moving on to the next thing, the next success. Even our failures lead to success. So don't discount those. They're not fun. They can be painful, but you know that they move us to the next place. The last 3 years were difficult. I'm tired. You heard me say I'm tired. I'm tired of talking about it, and I won't anymore. But we need to recognize building our businesses is not easy, and we figured that out from the last couple years. But we're part of an amazing business community. I think you heard these folks say that too. And we can lean on each other for support, and that's a really important piece of what we have here. We learned how to extend grace over the last couple years, and I think that will all serve us well going forward. So I hope this was an encouragement to you today. And for those of you who are joining us for lunch, you can make your way down to the Washington House. On your way out, please pick up some information about Lead Indian Valley. That's our leadership program that we're starting to recruit for that again, and also our clay shoot. So we have to have some fun too, right? We just had our golf outing a couple weeks ago. Our clay shoot's coming up in September. But let's give our panelists another round of applause. Thank you very much. Have a great summer, and we'll see you in a couple months.
Nice job.
I thought that the name had to do with the town restaurant.
It does.
It does.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yep.
Here, let me get you guys real quick. Right there, actually, because it's kind of a cool, backdrop. Brad, can I borrow you real quick? Yeah. Let me have them real quick, so. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank you guys.